Hi, this is Richard Baronio. I'd like to tell you a few thoughts that I've had about the comparison between sculpture and yoga. I've made this little piece temporarily here on my work table out of some scraps that I had. And the first thing I'd like to talk about in sculpture is the sense that a sculpture is solid and stands on the ground, in this case the surface of the workbench, in a field of gravity. And in order to show that in a sculpture, show the solidity, show the weightiness of it, you have to rely on the shape of things. So I've chosen a few pieces that have a kind of a curve and a flat bottom so that they seem heavy. They seem to have weight. They do have weight, but they seem to have even more weight. Now in yoga, we're very conscious of our weight, our stance in gravity, our pressing down on the ground. And let's say in Tadasana, you would start by planting your feet in a position that seems appropriate and properly positioned under your body to carry your body weight right down to the ground. And then you would align your body up above that in a way that's appropriate to the structure of your body. Well, in a sculpture, you also want to align the parts above the base. And now it's not so much, there is no body given in sculpture, but you want to align the parts so that they seem to make sense in their arrangement above this base. Another similarity, I think, between the two, between sculpture and yoga, is that yoga then asks you to go inside yourself. Yoga does that by calling your attention to your breath. In a sculpture, the sculpture has no breath, but it does have a kind of complexity. It does have a kind of energizing life to it, or it should. And so the sculptor wants to call attention to that, wants to go somehow connect with that energizing force. In yoga, it's the breath. So we have various ways of becoming aware of the breath in yoga. We breathe in certain controlled ways, or we just close our eyes and feel ourselves inhaling and exhaling. Once we've connected with the breath in yoga, we then try to use that as a means to calm ourselves, to go deeper into ourselves. And what we're looking for at that point is really, I think, the balance between the different parts. And in a sculpture, the sculptor is always looking for the balance of the parts, because he understands that a sculpture isn't a symmetrical thing. It's not perfectly balanced. It's not the same on the right as the left, but parts are different. And so the balance is created with a bunch of different parts. In a person, it's more symmetrical. The right arm is more or less equal to the left arm, but not exactly. And when you go into yourself and you begin an asana practice, you're very aware that one muscle or one part of your body feels very different from its opposite. And in the beginning, those differences seem almost alarming sometimes. But as the practice proceeds, those differences tend to work themselves out. Of course, if you've practiced a long time, you're very aware of the strengths. Maybe one leg has always been stronger than the other. You can sometimes do something about that. But there's parts of your body that you can't do anything about. One femur may be longer than the other. That's just the way it is. So at a certain point with yoga, you have to accept your body as it is. And I think there's a sense of its complexity, the beauty of its complexity replaces the sense that it is somehow too complex or too complicated or out of balance or not symmetrical. So once this acceptance of it, of the irregularity of your body, let's say, once that sense is replaced with a sense that you are wonderful as you are, you're interesting, you're vital, you then have something similar in sculpture where the idea is not to make a perfect piece. The idea is to make a piece that is alive with contradictions, with complexity. One part moves out, the other part moves in. One part moves up, the other part moves down. And the job of the sculptor is to allow all that to happen, to appreciate it, and to somehow bring it into balance. Bring the different parts into working together with each other. And I think that's also the goal in yoga, where you accept what you are, who you are, what you have and don't have, and you then try to pull all those parts together into some balance. And once you've done that, once you've intuitively kind of gotten all those parts to talk to each other, to relate to each other, to be in some whole together, you've kind of reached the point where you are now ready to accept yourself as just a small part of the universe. It's the same thing happens in sculpture. Once, as a sculptor, you've allowed the aspects of the sculpture to develop, you've added pieces, you've taken pieces off that didn't look right, you've accepted the complexities of the piece. It's become a very intuitive process. The piece seems to grow almost of its own. You're helping it, but it seems to have a life of its own. And at some point, as a sculptor, you step back and you accept it for what it is, for what it's become. And in a way, it's beyond your responsibility now. It's beyond your making. It now exists on its own, for itself, with its own rules. And the same in yoga. You finally come to see yourself as just a small part of the universe, as the sculpture you've made is just a small part of the universe. And the universe itself, this universal intelligence which informs everything, your sculpture, you, your yoga, seems to be everywhere, and you're simply a small part of it. Thank you. This is Richard Baronio. I'll talk to you soon.